Hey everyone, this is Dayu from EcommOps. One of the most common questions I always get, even before this whole US tariff de minimis fiasco, was I'm selling in the US, I want to expand outside of the US, I'm shipping from China, which markets should I look into first? Now, that question was always a great question, and I always thought that you should really expand to non-US markets if that's what you're focusing on. However, these days, right now, it's the middle of March 2025, and there is still uncertainty around if the de minimis elimination from China to the US is going to come back for China direct shipping. It might be in April, it might be in May, it might be never, but if and when it does come back, then one of the biggest ways, probably easiest ways to de-risk your potential additional duties and fees for US shipping is to not sell to the US as much or expand to international markets. So this idea of expanding to international markets becomes ever more important. However, not all international market is made equal. All right, so before we get started, a couple notes first. So this video, again, this is March 15th right now, 2025, and this is really more preparing for if and when de minimis is eliminated again to the US from China. If you have no idea what that is, definitely watch my previous video on the US tariffs on China and the de minimis to get up to speed first, and I'll link to it below. Or if you want to expand outside of the US anyways, and you should, regardless of the US tariffs, you should always expand to non-US markets if you can. That's what most of our most successful, biggest clients do. They sell globally, and that's one of the easiest ways, usually, if you know what to do, to be able to expand your customer base and expand your sales. Third is you have to have access to efficient D2C parcel fulfillment from China. So this is specifically talking about if you're able to ship orders direct to consumers from China, you have stock in China, or you have the ability to do so. And then finally, keep in mind that this is more from a logistical standpoint, getting your goods to your customers and a platform consideration, but this does not account for all local regulations, all local sales taxes, or equivalent requirements. And that's something that you should really figure out with the right local experts or accountants. So I'm going to take a structured approach to this. So first, I'm going to divide all these countries that we at least serve in terms of key e-commerce markets between countries that are just pretty simple in terms of shipping considerations. So there's no really logistical challenges or complexity shipping from China. And then also the countries that do have some considerations or complexities shipping from China. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but you have to consider additional complexities to do so. And then I'm going to split into three tiers. So tier one is countries that basically anyone can expand to, assuming that your brand is, English facing or US facing, can expand to with really no or really minimal localization, whether it's language or platform. And then tier two are really these countries you can test and at least test the waters to make sure that it's a country that you might want to invest in the future. However, it does require some level of localization to scale. And then finally, tier three is you have to localize to sell in the first place. So if you don't deeply understand how that market works, those platform works, don't even start selling in the first place. Now, before I talk about the countries, you will know that I don't talk about all the countries in the world. So this is really focusing more on the top e-commerce D2C markets that EcommOps serves that, basically most global e-commerce brands are going to consider. There are many, many countries in the world that either they just do not have consistent logistics or they just don't have enough e-commerce volume. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't sell them or start businesses there, but certainly this is not something that is they're not very attractive considerations for D2C e-com, especially if you don't have a presence in that specific country. All right, so let's get started. So again, assuming that you're already a US focused brand. So in terms of tier one, it can expand to a no minimum localization. So these are probably pretty obvious. No real shipping considerations from China are Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand. English speaking countries, easy shipping to. UK has some of the fastest shipping from China in the world, as fast as 4 to 6 days at certain lines. And just generally speaking, these countries are the ones that No real shipping considerations except just turning on your marketing, and they're English speaking. So we have many clients who just literally like turn on marketing to these countries and they're able to sell directly to them and ship directly from China. I do remind everyone that each of these countries they do have local sales tax requirements or equivalent. So as you scale up in these countries, you do need to figure out your tax situations. However, all these countries are types of countries where you're going to have some threshold where you could just get started before you worry too much about local state tax or local country taxes. Now, so I put this section here. So the US states of Alaska and Hawaii and US territories. So the reason why I put these here is because, well, they're obviously US states, so you can sell to them. However, currently mainline ecom optimized courier lines like Union Express, they do not offer direct services to US states outside of the 48 states and US territories. So for these states and territories, you have to use ePacket or China Post directly into USPS. Now, right now it works. It's totally fine. However, if and when de minimis does get eliminated, we are not confident that ePacket has a way to support, any kind of efficient shipping to these states and territories. So just keep that in mind. These states and territories you're going to have to consider separately if and when de minimis is going to get eliminated because they don't have the same potential DDP option to the US that Unit Express is working on now. If you don't know what that is, again, check out my previous video that I'll link to below. All right, so let's talk about here. Tier 2 can test but require localizations and scale, but no significant shipping consideration. So countries like Singapore, Malaysia, the UAE, English speaking countries, or significant enough of English speakers that you can technically just run English ads. However, these are the kind of countries, whether because they're Asian or because, they're, Arab, that if you really want to scale up, you do want to consider some kind of more cultural localization. However, these are very much countries that you can use something like Shopify. You can use your typical online platforms to be able to sell, but you probably want to localize more to payments and cultural customs before you really scale hard or as you're really scaling hard. Now, right here are, again, can test but require localization to scale. So I'm going to put all EU countries that do not primarily utilize cash on delivery. Okay, so non-cash on delivery markets. So typically most of the Western EU, because in Eastern EU, a lot of countries, they do have a lot of cash on delivery. So EU countries, the main thing about the consideration is EU VAT. And in order to formally and legally sell to and ship to the EU market, even for direct to consumer, is you have to figure out your VAT situation. And if you're shipping internationally, there is a concept of an IOSS number so that you can apply for VAT and then you use that number to fast track through customs. If you have no idea what that is, I have a very extensive video that explains all of that since the IOSS was enacted. So check the link below to learn more about shipping goods from China to the EU. Now, first, you do have to figure out some kind of solution for the VAT, right? However, we have a lot of clients who even just test out like their English ads to European markets. Now, especially if you're marketing on something like Meta, like these days, the algorithm, like they're gonna actually find your customers in these markets. So even if you're saying like, targeting Germany, for example, and it's all fully English ads, you're gonna have a significant population that also understands English. And maybe your brand is actually a very attractive brand from a US perspective, so they might purchase the product anyways. So what I mean there is that before you spend too much time like figuring out like EU business structures, how to scale it up, these are countries that you can just test to and kind of see if you're even close to break even. Because if you're like even close to break even, then presumably if you actually localize for the language and also platform and payments as well. So when I say payments, for example, in Germany, like you really want to get on Klarna in order to get like, most of the customer base. However, if you're like almost profitable with English ads, no Klarna, no like German optimization, and it's like almost kind of working, then it gives you at least more confidence. Hey, this is something you might want to invest in to expand into the market in the future. Mexico is also a kind of similar situation. Mexico actually relatively recently, they actually enacted kind of like a VAT system as well. So they're going to collect duties at customs, except it's going to be on declared value. Okay, so it's not going to be on retail value like the EU VAT. And also, Mexico is one of those countries where you can sell technically using English ads, but you do really want to localize if you really want to scale there. Although I will just say that Mexico generally is not a huge market, for US brands, no matter what. Now let's talk about tier three. So China and Hong Kong. Actually, China, and less so Hong Kong, but especially China, is incredibly easy for us, like EcommOps, or really any kind of China 3PL to ship to. China logistics is extremely cheap. It could arrive like in the next day or in 2 days, like maximum, and it's just like very, very cost efficient. So we've had a lot of Western brands like talk to us and like, hey, we want to get into the China market. We want to work with you. But the problem is you can't sell to the China market without without localizing to start with. And similar to like Thailand, similar to like some other Southeast Asian countries as well. So Thailand, really easy to ship to, very cheap to ship to, no problems at all. However, a lot of Asian countries, including these countries, they don't use credit cards. Like they just don't use credit cards. They use like bank transfers, they use QR payments, online payments, and they don't really think about online platforms the same way. They don't really commonly buy from websites. They would buy from like live streams, they would buy from like WeChat, they would buy from like the Asian version of TikTok, for example. So it works, but then this is yeah, you really have to know the market. You really have to set up a completely different operation, to completely different marketing sales funnel to access these markets. And finally, like I would say, I would say like everything in tier three, unless you like know what you're doing exactly, they just don't do it. But in tier three, for additional consideration, is going to be European countries or really any country that depends on cash on delivery. If you're working in a country that requires cash on delivery, which is going to be some Asian countries as well, including India, some parts of Southeast Asia, you really have to have local operations to operate that cash on delivery, call centers, and it's certainly not something that can be supported directly from China. There are a couple other ones here. So Brazil and South Africa, so they're both a little bit similar, where they have very stringent tax import rules going into customs for even parcels, not just imports. So for both of these countries, they actually require that the seller, the platform itself, pre-collect the buyer's or the customer's tax ID or equivalent in order to clear customs, otherwise just get stuck. So not only do you have to worry about like clearing customs on a parcel basis, but you have to actually collect it at checkout. Do not, I mean, we keep hearing about, oh, Brazil is such an interesting market. We hear folks crushing in Brazil. They're crushing in Brazil because they know how to collect the right information. Do not just open up to the Brazil market. Your packages will get stuck. Japan is also kind of similar as well. Just Japanese customers in general like are not really that keen to purchase online from, international markets. And then Japan has a very unique requirement that all of its addresses, at least the courier systems that go into local postal system, they actually require Japanese. So you have to collect addresses in Japanese in order to at least guarantee that it's going to arrive there successfully. So again, obviously there's a lot of countries that are missing here. However, this is really meant to be a high level summary. And obviously, the point is like just focus on these first, right? Focus on tier one countries. I mean, these countries, like these four countries, like literally, if you have stock in China right now, you could just turn them on. They're, like you could just turn them on and they just if you work with EcommOps at least, right? You could just tell us and then actually you don't have to tell us anything. If we see Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand orders, we'll just ship them. Okay. And then I would say that in tier two, it really just kind of depends. Like I really think that you could just test all of these. Like why not? And or these at least. Like why not? You could just test it and see what happens before you try to localize for language and payment platforms. But again, for these additional considerations, before you sell to the EU, figure out your VAT strategy, similar to Mexico as well. And again, I'd say just probably ignore these for now unless you really know what you're doing. All right, so again, so this is really meant to be a very high level summary. I have so much to talk about each of these countries as well. So if you are interested, just comment below and I'll either answer them or maybe expand on it in a future video. And one final note though is make sure that you understand past the shipping, like sales taxes and things like that. Make sure you do understand that. However, again, most of these countries they're gonna have a threshold before that really matters. So like, why not just try testing there before thinking anything about that? And this is something that we do see a lot of clients sometimes get held back by, like they want to expand to the UK, but they don't really know what to do about like whatever UK sales taxes is. Do they have to start like a business in the UK, for example? Like none of that is necessary just to get started. That was always the case, and now especially if you want to de-risk from potential impacts from US tariffs and the de minimis elimination, then I would strongly suggest considering these kinds of expansions. All right, so that's it for now. If you want to see more content like this, follow my page, follow the YouTube channel. And again, this is from EcommOps. We are a 3PL based in China. If you have more than 30 or 50 orders per day and you want to work with what I think the best in China fulfillment, feel free to reach out to us. But otherwise, look forward to sharing more information on just general e-commerce logistics, especially from China in the future. So look out for that. Once again, this is Dayu from EcommOps. See you guys next time.